I want to talk about something today that was a little bit concerning for me. If you find that you are scared to share your work and you spiral into self-doubt every so often and you don't know what actually makes your story unique, this video is very important for you to watch. For those of you that don't know me yet, hello, my name is Emma Van Grieken and I share videos all about creativity, faith, and following your calling while balancing a busy family life and everything that you have to contend with as an adult. But I have been very busy lately working on my debut fantasy novel, Project Starfall. Title is coming soon, and I am hopefully going to be querying agents in fall of 2026. I have had my head so deep and narrowed down, just focused and buried in the sand, learning how to write an amazing query letter and a fantastic synopsis and how to create a fantastic elevator pitch. I shared a post on Instagram asking other authors to pitch me their novel in one sentence, and the results were concerning. There is a big difference here between a premise and a plot that we have to understand, but we're gonna get all into that in just a second, okay? What exactly is the challenge of not having an elevator pitch? Let's just start by defining some differences here between what these terms mean. Your elevator pitch is essentially, if you and I were to cross paths in an elevator and you told me that you're writing a book and I said, oh cool, what's it about? What's that one very long-winded sentence that you would tell me that doesn't give away every single thing about your plot, but it does tell me more than just the premise? This is where it gets really important to understand the difference between a premise and a plot. When I asked authors to pitch me their book in one sentence, what most people did overwhelmingly was tell me the premise with no details about the plot. The premise is what you as an author use to start spinning the wheels of your story and getting things going where you can be creative from that jumping off point. The plot is what exactly happens in your book, and it should outline the character, the conflict, the requirements that they have in order to grow, and the consequence if they don't. So what is an example of the difference between a premise and a plot? If you want to talk about your story in terms of a premise, you could say it's a story about evil forces coming back from the ashes, found family, and it's all set in this dark academia world. That doesn't tell me anything about your book though. I don't know who the characters are. I know a little bit about the genre, but I don't really know if this is a historical fiction or speculative fantasy. I don't know the consequences of your character or how old your character is, so I as a reader can't even walk into a bookstore and find your book on any of the shelves if I wanted to. But if you were to describe that same book in terms of a plot, here's what you might say. When a young boy learns that he is a wizard, and that the truth behind his parents' tragic death is darker than he ever could have imagined, Harry is thrust into a magical world that he never knew existed. And as he enrolls into the Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, he begins to unravel the mystery behind the night his parents died and why he survived the curse, all while trying not to fail potions class or fall off his broomstick. So let's look at another example before we move on. You could say that you are telling a dystopian story about an oppressive government and a district uprising, and a war breaks out, and there is this convoluted process through which the poor can gain riches. Again, that doesn't really tell me much about your story. I know a little bit more in this premise than I did in the last one. I know that you are writing a dystopian fiction, but I don't know anything else about the characters, the consequences, or once again, what actually happens in your book, so I just don't care. But if we were to put that premise into a plot pitch, here's what it would actually look like. 74 years ago, the capital of Panem invented the Hunger Games as a way to remind the districts of consequences for their uprising. But when 18-year-old Katniss Everdeen's younger sister is selected to enter the games in the Reaping, Katniss will go into the trials and fight against the most deadly odds if she wants to survive and return to her family, hopefully lifting them out of their poverty as she returns to District 12 as a victor. If I heard either of those premises in an elevator, I would not remember to look up your book. It's just not interesting enough. There's not enough going on. You haven't given me stakes. You haven't given me a point of view to follow. And I want to just be really clear right here before we get confused. There is a big difference between your book blurb and your elevator pitch. That book blurb is where you can get into a lot more detail without revealing the plot, obviously. You don't want to give away your twists, but you do want to give people a little bit more. You want to give your readers a good enough taste of what your book is about that they actually build up an appetite for it and ask for a slice. So the elevator pitch should not be a crumb, but it should be this delicious little morsel of cake that they get to taste. and let you know that they want more. One of the biggest challenges I see authors encountering when I'm having conversations in the online community is the fact that they hit a certain point where things just stop and they don't know where to go next, and they have this doubt about if their story is actually any good. And I don't say this as a rebuke, and I don't say it as a flex, but that is not a challenge that I have, because I understand what my book is about in this one sentence elevator pitch. So I want to give you an example of a premise versus a plot pitch that we can just build spontaneously out of thin air before the book even exists. This would be an example of a premise. It's a slow burn forbidden love, happily ever after fantasy featuring found family and feminine rage in a kingdom filled with ancient secrets and a threat rising again from the ashes. I have never heard anything so dull in my life. Not only does that sound like so many other books that are on the market, but there's absolutely nothing for me to grab onto. It was just a bunch of blah, 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 blah tropes dumped out of your mouth to try and grab me if I like those tropes. And don't get me wrong, there is a time and place for this. There are certain readers that are going to grab onto tropes as soon as they see them because they want to read everything they can about found family and feminine rage. But if you are an author trying to publish a piece of literature, the agents that you are sending your book off to, or the readers that are going to find you on Amazon and make a decision if they want to buy your self-published work, these people need to know what actually makes your story unique. And if you want to stand out, you cannot be ambiguous. So let's take that premise and turn it into a plot pitch. Morgana Maywin left her freedom and everything she knew at 19 years old to marry the aged king of Andalin for the army he'd bring to her dying kingdom during the dragon attack of the year 207. But after His Majesty's death 3 years later and dragons breeding once again in the east, Morgana must step out of her late husband's shadow to become a true queen and leader who people can trust, all while her secret love for a young knight can no longer be kept in the darkness. Do you see the difference there between the two? Take in the fact just for a second that that is the exact same book being pitched two different ways. I could be standing in the elevator with two different people, and one of them could tell me that premise. It's a slow burn, happily ever after, feminine rage, found family, and I wouldn't care because there's just not a lot going on. But if the other person told me that one, I would be like, when can I read it? It's not even a book, and I'm already like, when can I read that? That sounds like a great book. Maybe I'll write that myself. Maybe you should write it. It's a great pitch. But so that's why this one sentence elevator pitch is such a great exercise, because you can take any idea you have and you can turn it into a very interesting concept. So now that we've talked about exactly why it's so important that you know what your elevator pitch is and you aren't just telling people your tropes or your premise, I am actually going to read you some of the comments that I got on Instagram where authors are pitching their book, and we're going to workshop this right now to try and make them better. Let's go. A Regency-era debutante uses strategies from the Sun Tzu's Art of War to secure herself a wealthy husband in order to save her family from financial ruin. Because that's such a good pitch, I actually want to read that book. This is an amazing example. It tells me it is a Regency-era debutante. I can guess that this woman is probably in her early 20s. I also know that I'm going to find this book on the historical fiction shelf if I'm ever going into the bookstore. I know that she's trying to secure a husband. I can understand the social expectations of this time, but there are so many twists and turns that this author could take that I don't know off the bat, but she's given me that fork full of cake where I say, yum, that had delicious icing, that was a nice frothy batter, I want another piece of that. So that was amazing. That is the example that I want you to keep in your head, along with all these others, when we're talking about how to build a good pitch. When Evelyn eats the forbidden fruit, she knows she must hide the evidence, otherwise she will face exile or death. This one is interesting, but I can't really tell what it's trying to tell me. Is this a historical fiction inspired by the Christian story, or is this an epic fantasy set in a world that is fully created? Or is it a dystopian speculative fiction where we've taken this concept of Evelyn and the forbidden fruit and we've set it into this oppressive societal regime? I don't know. There's a lot of different directions this could go, and it hasn't given me enough to really build up my hunger for that book. That said, your book might be absolutely amazing. This is just why we always have to do the legwork as authors, to make sure that we are actually describing to people what makes our book unique and giving them enough that keeps them interested. After the destruction of his kingdom reveals a long-buried atrocity committed by his own family, A young prince and a scattered group of survivors must decide whether the legacy they inherited is worth saving, and whether hope can survive the truth, as they race to stop an ancient force and a man determined to reclaim what he lost from destroying what remains of the world. Okay, so the prose there is actually pretty good. I'm getting a vibe of your story. I already know that this is going to be some kind of epic fantasy, but I would want to know a little bit more about this ancient force, and I'd want to know who the man is. How is he connected to these characters? And what is it that they are actually up against? Because what this author has done here with the story in this pitch is they've really clearly defined that these characters are coming from a wealthy family that has an established legacy, and they are debating if what has been built is actually worth preserving. So I get a pretty clear picture of what's going on there. But then we really lose the plot when it comes to this ancient force and this man, and I would love to see those details clarified as much as the beginning of the story, because I'm already invested in these characters and this premise about their wealth and deciding if it's worth keeping safe. So you just have to stick the landing and really describe to me what it is they're up against, and if you did that, I would be like, whoa, I'm already invested in these people. That's a pretty big stake. I want to know what happens in between. So you're actually very close with this one. Congratulations. A Jekyll and Hyde continuation, where Jekyll brings the flowers and Hyde brings the danger. I really don't understand this pitch. I don't know if this is historical fiction. I don't know if this is a queer romance. I don't know if this is a modern retelling. I don't really know what it means by one of them bringing the flowers and one of them bringing the danger. So I wouldn't really know where to find this book in the bookstore, and I can't tell if I'm your reader right off the bat. I don't know what the stakes are. I don't know what the consequences are, and I don't understand what challenge they're going to be facing. So I would say that this is a little bit more of an author premise that you're going to use to kickstart your writing. Until you've defined that, I would not be interested in this book. They're fighting to put the human back in humanity. Okay. Again, I don't understand this one. This is going to be a great starting point for an author to spin their wheels on. But when you say they're fighting to put the human back in humanity, are you telling me a story that is set in a sci-fi universe where AI has taken over the world and human beings are now being hunted as organics and used as battery power, like the Matrix, but the humans are trying to destroy the AI race? Or is this a story of a mother-daughter connection coming back together after the grandmother dies and they finally start to dissect their relationships and learn to see the humanity in each other like they never have before? We need to clarify what exactly is going on with the genre and the character and the story overall before this is a really strong pitch. She's emotionally avoidant and has never liked physical affection. And he's emotionally volatile, and he is constantly in and out of physical relationships. And they get married. Okay. I'm just gonna say the same thing again and again with so many of these pitches, so I'm gonna apologize now for repetition. This is an idea, and you as the author know what is filled into those blanks, but your readers do not, and neither does a potential agent, so we need to clarify what is actually going on. I don't understand the consequence. I don't understand why it is that they would get married, because it sounds like they're a terrible match and you haven't given me a rational explanation why they would, and it's not my job to investigate that. So unless you as the author give me a little bit more of that fork full of cake, I'm not gonna build up an appetite to find out. So if I read this pitch or you told me about it in the elevator, I would probably walk away without a second thought. But that said, your story is most likely amazing and I want people to read it, so let's workshop how this could potentially be better. Keeping in mind that all of these details are going to be subjected to the details that the author is going to fill in for themselves. I am just trying to workshop things as best as I can with the little bit of information that I've been given. I really don't understand from the outset why these characters would get married, so I've adjusted the premise a little bit just to workshop it into a better elevator pitch. Let's get into this one. 23-year-old Vivian Wells has never really been in love or liked being hugged. But her charismatic best friend Damien has never had a stable girlfriend. And after years of their moms trying to set them up, they finally agree to a fake relationship that will shut up both of their families. And when real feelings start to evolve, they are forced to confront their miscommunications, relationship delusions, and wounds that live right underneath the surface, begging to be uncovered. I actually want to read that one, and I'm not a romance reader. That sounds like a really good pitch. So again, the author is going to fill in their own details here, and if there's a reason why someone who's emotionally volatile and someone who's emotionally avoidant would get married, then the author can fill in that detail into a more structured pitch like this. But again, you can see why giving more information in this elevator pitch makes people more engaged in reading the book. So I hope that's helpful. Xanthia reminded herself as she slipped out of the bathroom that she had seen death too many times to know that it was no longer her enemy, but an angel wearing a demon's skin. This is a really cool piece of prose, and it gives me a sense of your literary voice, but it doesn't tell me anything about your story. So I actually had a little bit more of a conversation with this author. I learned a bit more about her story, and this is the workshopped pitch that we came up with. When a war-orphaned daughter of a general faces the task of raising her father's army without the experience or grit of a battle-trained veteran, she is faced with not only constant attacks that threaten her kingdom, but with the challenge of becoming a leader who people can turn to, a soldier they can trust, and a woman who lets nothing stand in the way of protecting the ones she loves. That sounds a lot better than the first one, and I guarantee with your own details, it's going to sound even better. Congratulations. We are going to get into the rapid fire round. There are so many comments on this video I haven't responded to, so I'm just going to make up pitches as we go, but that is just further proof that this exercise can get more fun and more easy as you go about it, okay? Ancient Egyptian romance, high stakes, and tragedy. I don't know anything about what's going on here. Princess Cleo's father was in the middle of brokering an alliance with a neighboring kingdom that would have saved her people from starvation. But after her father's passing and an arranged marriage made only for the benefit of her kingdom, Cleo finds herself mistakenly in love with a commoner. And unless she can conclude the deal her father began, her empire will fall into ruin. That's the kind of format we want to put it into. We want to give a little bit more detail, okay? This could be really, really fun though. I'm excited for your pitch. Some choices don't let you keep everything. Who is making the choice? What choice are they making? What is the genre? Where is the setting? I'm in a blank white room. I have no idea who I am or what I'm looking at. I don't care about this book. We need to workshop this a little bit more. We're really gonna have to reach for this one. 23-year-old stable boy Jeremiah has watched his father flounder to provide his family a future, and nothing has ever come of it. But when he is presented with the opportunity to travel to a noble lord's court and become a knight after winning a local competition, Jeremiah must decide what is more valuable: staying in the dust with the family and fiance he has always known, or leaving in search of wealth to provide them the life they'd never had, even if it's one without him. That's a book I would read! And it's based on the premise of some choices don't let you keep everything. And again, that is not the story that this author is telling. I guarantee I don't know what this author is telling because there's no details involved, but you can build a whole novel just off of an elevator pitch. There are so many good ideas here, guys. A girl in modern-day Ireland finds a mysterious object outside of her bedroom one night and is transported into the fairy realm and finds out she has to pay a debt she didn't know about. That's actually a really interesting pitch. I would just probably include a little bit more details about this mysterious object and a little bit more about who's asking for the debt. So when I'm reading this pitch, I'm thinking about, you know, maybe she has an old aunt who's requested that the main character come out of the city and stay with her in the country for the summer. But when the main character is searching around her aunt's eclectic farm home, she finds a mysterious object that transports her to the fairy realm, where she discovers that her aunt was actually a witch who betrayed this important lord of the fairyland and left without paying the debt, and she's not allowed to leave until she pays it. And again, there are so many cool directions you could go with these stories, you guys. It's just you have to tell people what you are actually writing about. So I'm gonna stop there because I think you get the point, but leave your one-sentence elevator pitch in the comments below. I know that I've been harsh, I know that I've been blunt, but I believe that your story is fantastic. And if it's not right now, there are a couple details that you can hone in as the author to make it so. This elevator pitch isn't just so you can talk with other people very easily and with confidence about your book, it's also so you as the author are forced to sit with what the most important details of your story actually are, so that you can tell the best story possible. Don't forget to subscribe so that you stick around for more videos, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!